My name is Lauren Kassell. I am Professor of History of Science and Medicine at the University of Cambridge and Chair of the History of Science at the European University Institute. Welcome to my exp. Astrology was one of the longest surviving intellectual traditions in history. So when we get to early modern Europe, it has been around from its development in ancient Mesopotamia through its elaboration first by the Greeks and then in the Arab world, and it gets transmitted to Europe in the Middle Ages. And then it becomes more and more complex in the Renaissance. It's something where the basic premise of astrology isn't something that was complicated. It was the most straightforward thing in the world. The heavens are connected to life on Earth, and as the stars move, so life on Earth changes. Astronomy was the word that came to mean both astronomy and astrology. So astronomy is the study of the motions of the stars and planets, and astrology is the study of how they affect life on Earth. So I said this was entirely straightforward, entirely natural as an idea. If you think about the way that most people will know, if they spend any time in the natural world, that plants change with the seasons, and some plants even change with the day. Flowers and open and close as sunlight strikes them, or they may even turn their heads. Similarly, the moon affects the tides. If you happen to go anywhere near the seaside, you recognize that there are tidal shifts. So these connections between what happens up in the sky and what happens on Earth are perfectly straightforward, and you can extrapolate them, or rather early modern scholars extrapolated them to explain and investigate all sorts of aspects of the fate of nations, and that's going backwards and forwards in history, and the lives of individuals. They had many different techniques for doing this, and they worked across universities, across courts, in marketplaces, in private households. Astrology was practiced in all sorts of places. It was practiced in universities, in royal courts, in marketplaces, in private households. It was written about in big, elaborate books, but it was also the content of almanacs and broadsides that you might pin up on the wall. If you wanted to become an astrologer, there were two main routes. One was that you might be somebody who had the privilege of studying at university, and that would mean usually you would be studying medicine if you were learning astrology at university, and you would then end up with a position either at a court, if you were very fortunate, or you would be working in private practice, advising clients and patients, and you might also have a position at the university. But astrology was so varied that it wasn't necessarily the case that the most elite people, the people who had the privilege of university education, were the ones who became astrologers. Astrology and medicine are often talked about together in the early modern period. It's often assumed that they're sort of synonymous because there was this inseparable connection between the macrocosm, that's the celestial bodies, and the microcosm, life on Earth. But there wasn't one thing called astrological medicine or medical astrology in the period. If you were an astrologer, you might advise about medical topics. And if you were a doctor, you might use astrology. And so you have the coming together of these two very different traditions. So your everyday astrologer was somebody who could advise through a set of particular computations, either about general predictions, wars, famines, plagues, or about individual questions. And these individual questions could relate to whether somebody wanted to make a good choice about something to do in the future, whether it was to send a ship on a voyage or move house. It could also be something that was helping them to understand what had happened in their past or what might happen in their future. So these are all different techniques.